Okay, this is Mrs. Fritz here, and I am going to get started with our career day interview with Nicole Czaplicki. Nicole and I have known each other pretty much all of our lives. She is a graduate of Greenville School. We both graduated in 2004, and I am so excited to interview her today about her career. So, hi, Nicole. If you could tell us a little bit about what your job and career is, that would be great.
Hi, well, thank you, Mrs. Fritz, for inviting me to come speak for Career Day. So I currently work for the U.S. Census Bureau. I am a mathematical statistician there. Most people are familiar with the Census Bureau for the decennial census, which gives us our population counts. But I actually work in the part of the Census Bureau that publishes economic statistics. And more specifically, I work on research for different methodologies for economic statistics. So what I do on a typical day is do research for how we better produce our economic measurements. Things like the economic indicators, including retail sales, wholesale sales, manufacturing output, things like that. All come out of the Census Bureau, and I'm working on those type of things.
Okay, so while we were growing up and you said you just wanted to grow up and do math, you pretty much nailed it with this career. So
yes, it's a good fit for me.
Good. So what steps did you have to take to get to this point, to have this career?
So I studied in college. I got a bachelor's degree in mathematics and economics. I double majored, and then my master's degree is in mathematical finance. That's not necessarily the typical educational path that all of my colleagues have taken, but most of us have at least a master's degree in some kind of math-related field. So either math or statistics or perhaps computer programming, or kind of the new emerging field in our area is data science.
Okay.
So most people that I work with have at minimum of a master's degree in some kind of math-related field.
And where did you go to college?
I went to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte.
Okay. So could you walk us through like a typical day in your world of work?
Sure. Spend a lot of time on email. That's our primary means of communicating with each other. I also collaborate with other researchers a lot. We work on teams, and so we typically will meet a couple times a week to discuss what we're working on, and then come up with a plan of what we're going to go and do separately, and then we work individually. So like we have a lot of teamwork, but then we also have to do most of our research tasks individually. So that will probably include a lot of programming. There's various statistical programming languages that we use. The one we use most frequently at Census is SAS. Then we'll probably do some data analysis as part of the research, looking at what the data is showing us. So if we have maybe an area where we have very low response, figuring out how we can make adjustments to that to still produce an estimate, even though we have much smaller response than we anticipated. And then another thing that I spend a lot of time on is documenting my work. So either for an internal audience, which will be maybe a little less formal and have a little less background information, because the internal audience, you know, these are my coworkers, they know the kind of the context of what I'm working in, or for an external audience, maybe to present at a conference. And that just is a different form of writing, a different form of gathering your thoughts, because you have to kind of explain the problem, explain the context that you're working in, and then explain the research that was done.
So it sounds like there's a lot of teamwork involved. Like in the beginning stages, you're really bouncing a lot of ideas off of your coworkers and kind of making a plan to move forward with. A lot of collaboration, like you said.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So what do you love most about your job?
One of the things I love most about my job is that I get to do a variety of tasks. I'm not doing the same thing every day or even every year. I'm doing new things all the time. I mean, they're usually all research projects that will eventually wind up becoming a paper that might be presented someplace, but the topics are really varied. And so I'm always doing new things, learning new methodologies, and also developing new skills. So that's one thing I really love. Another thing is that we get to be really self-directed in our work and in our development. So if there is an area that you're really interested in, you know, say a new programming language or a new technique, we usually get a lot of support to pursue growth in that area. So like, for example, there was one, I wanted to learn linear programming or something. And there was a Coursera class, which is like a free online learning environment that was on that particular methodology. And I was allowed to go and take that class and kind of develop that skill. So that's another thing that I really like. Everyone seems to support your growth. I mean, as long as it's related to the job, right. Growth in the things that you're interested in.
Yeah, kind of encouraging yourself, because that's going to make your work all the more important and quality.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you talked a little bit about this because you said that you're constantly learning new skills because you're really doing a different thing every day or every year. So what are some skills that you do need for this job? And whether that's kind of soft skills, because it sounds like you have to do a lot of collaboration. So communication and problem solving is really important, but maybe even some trainable skills. Like what should someone be prepared to be skilled at to be able to do this job well?
Sure. I'll start with the trainable ones, because those are the ones that you think of most when you think of becoming a statistician. Obviously, lots and lots of education in math and statistics. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. I've had to take a lot of math and statistics classes and to be really proficient in what I learned there, not just, you know, enough to pass the test, but enough to use it on a daily basis. Also, the other thing I can't stress enough is programming. Like, as a young student, I never realized how much programming would become a big part of my life as a math and statistics person, but it is huge. We do a ton of programming. That's the way you do math and statistics work nowadays, is by programming the computer to do it for you. We're not doing a lot of calculations in our heads or anything. We're programming the computer to do it for us. So
right. But the fundamentals are important so that you know how to do that correctly.
Exactly. And you have to be able to read the documentation to understand what calculations you're asking the program to do. So you have to really understand that. And sometimes you still do have to code specifically those calculations, but a lot of times it's identifying the right software and the right packages within the software to do the calculations that you want it to do. And the programming languages that I use on a frequent basis are SAS. That's what we use at Census for all of our production work. But another one is Python, which is an open source, freely available programming language. And also R is another open source programming language that's really popular in the statistics community.
When you say open source, do you mean that anyone can kind of play around with that?
It's free. So open source means that people from around the world can just upload their own package. So there's no one person that programmed these things. People keep submitting bits of code, and you can go and use the code that other people have developed.
So interesting.
Yeah. It is. It's really neat, but it also means that it grows, and it's this huge world, and you just have to identify what specifically you need for your application. In terms of soft skills, there's a lot. Problem solving, definitely, because a lot of our research begins with a problem that needs to be addressed, and so we're just trying to come up with new ideas and techniques for how to best address that problem. How to best produce our estimates that are the most reliable for our data users, which are just the American people, in the best way possible. So we have to do a lot of problem solving, a lot of innovating to come up with those new ideas. We work in teams a lot, so teamwork is obviously really important, as is communication. because to have a good team, you need to be able to communicate with one another. But also, I mentioned earlier that a lot of what I do is to write papers that I get to present at conferences. So I have to have strong written communication skills to write those papers, and then oral communication skills to later present them in front of an audience. Another skill that I think is really important is to be a self-starter and to be able to work independently. There's a lot of times when I'm working on stuff and maybe it's a little time between when my team will meet next, but I'm doing some analysis. I have to kind of come up with my own ideas for what I want to do and work through that a little bit and bring it to the team and to be able to say, yeah, I thought about this. What do you guys think? With some examples that I've done already.
Which can be really positive for someone who's a real independent thinker. And like you said, a great self-starter, someone who's got the motivation and enjoys that challenge of getting something started on their own.
Yeah. And then the last one I would say, and this is something that I think is probably important in all career areas, is the ability to take constructive criticism. A lot of times when we are doing our work, there's going to be someone kind of more senior than you, or even just when we're preparing things to present outside, our work has to go through a review process. It's pretty rigorous. And through that review process, you're going to get lots of comments and lots of suggestions. And you have to be able to take those and incorporate them well, and not be offended when people are commenting on your work. And just to take it and make your work better and to see it in that light rather than to see it as something personal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of that self-awareness piece of what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and kind of taking it from there to move forward.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of time left, and one question that I really thought would be interesting, especially since you are a Greenville alumni, you got to take the classes that some kids are really sitting in right now. And I'm wondering if there were any classes, whether it was in middle school or high school, that really connect to what you do now, classes that maybe you are happy that you took and would recommend to someone who's interested in working in this type of field.
Yeah, definitely any math class. All math classes would be helpful for my job and still connect to it now. The ones particularly that I remember from high school that really connect to what I do now would be AP Stats and AP Calculus. And I don't remember having any computer programming when I was in high school, but if that is offered, I would say that as well.
Well, I'm glad you said that. So we just started offering Mr. Evans, who still teaches calculus. It also offers a computer science course where they're learning a bit about programming, and they can even earn college credit through Siena. So it's a really great opportunity for them to do that. But I am sure that Mr. Russell and Mr. Evans will want to watch this interview because they're proud of where you are, and I know that they'll be happy to hear that taking their math classes is key. It's key to really success in any STEM career, I think, but absolutely if you want to become a statistician for the Census Bureau. So I want to thank you for your time. Nicole has mentioned that if any students were interested in learning more specifically about her career, she'd be happy to answer any individual questions. So just reach out to me if that is something you'd like to do. And I've got a direct line to her. And thank you again for your time, and we appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.